I have a question about sales tax. So sales tax is something that every state has a different rule for because sales tax is a state tax. State, county, there's other jurisdictions to tax it, but it's at the state level. It's not at the federal level. So each state has a different rule. And you have to know your rules. Now, if you live the state you live in, if you're selling a good or a service, the state you live in, you're going to have what's called Nexus with that state. And Nexus Nexus, Nexus, that tells you if you have to remit sales taxes for the goods that you sell. And Nexus, it's not just for sales taxes, but we're using it in this case. It can apply to other types of taxes too. So if I have what's called Nexus with a state, then I have to remit sales tax for anything I sell. And if I don't have Nexus, I don't have to remit it, but whoever consumes what I am providing, whether it's a good or a service, they have to remit it if I don't have Nexus. So I live in North Carolina, and so I automatically have Nexus here in North Carolina. I used to live in New York, and when I lived in New York, I automatically had Nexus with New York. So let's say I live in North Carolina right now, and then I sell some goods that are taxable in New York State. I'm not going to pay North Carolina sales tax. My customers won't pay North Carolina sales tax because the sales tax is due where the good or service is consumed. And it's more common on goods to have sales taxes than services, but there are a lot of services that are taxed as well. So if I sell, going back to my example, let's say I sell $10,000 worth of goods in New York, where I don't live. Are those subject to sales taxes? Well, let's assume that I have no other relationship with New York besides that. Like I don't have a location there. I'm just selling them. I'm shipping them through my online store. Well, that means that I would have to look at the threshold for New York. So for New York, the threshold for sales is $500,000. So if I have less than $500,000, I don't have Nexus with New York. That's also true of California and Texas. So if I don't sell $500,000 worth of sales for taxable services or goods, then I don't have Nexus with that state. I don't have to send money to that state for sales taxes. My customer does. That's very important. And so you need to know the thresholds and the rules for each state you're in. So I'm going to give you a quick summary for each state. So for those three I just mentioned, those are the ones that have the highest threshold. California, New York, and Texas, $500,000 of sales, and then you have Nexus with them, and you have to remit. Now there's another threshold, which is the number of goods. I think it's typically 200 sales. So if I make 1,000 sales, that might give me Nexus. So you have to look that up too. It's going to be different for every state. There's some more states that have 250,000 as a threshold. So that's Connecticut, Michigan, and North Carolina, where I am, and Tennessee. So those four states, if you have $250,000 of sales or more, you have Nexus with them. Then there's $200,000. So if I sell $200,000 worth of sales in Colorado, Idaho, New Mexico, or South Carolina, I have Nexus with them. And then let's use 100,000. Pretty much almost all the rest have $100,000 as the threshold. That's the normal one. Okay. Then there's some that have a really, really small threshold. Those three are Alabama, Missouri, and Wyoming. So if you sell more than $10,000 in Alabama, Missouri, or Wyoming, then you have Nexus with those states. And it's one of the reasons why online commerce stores won't sell to those states because they don't want to have to deal with sales taxes, and they need to have a lot of sales to make it worth a while for the compliance headache that brings. There are some states that have no sales tax, like Delaware, Montana, Oregon, and that's all that in New Hampshire. How could I forget New Hampshire? Live free or die, baby, right? I had a friend from there. So that is a quick, it gives you a quick idea about how to determine if you owe sales taxes. Now, if you do have Nexus, that means you need to remit sales taxes. And so you should be tracking all your sales by state. And if sales taxes due, you need to charge your client for the sales taxes and then withhold it from the sale and then remit it to the state. Now, you can do that regardless of the number, and sometimes that's just a good policy to have, because if you get audited and you were supposed to remit sales taxes and you didn't, there's going to be heavy penalties, and they like to do 3-year audit 3 years in a row, and so that number can be pretty large. So that's sales taxes for you. Hopefully you have a better understanding of what your Nexus is. If you have more questions, feel free to email us, cpa@buffalofinances.com, and I hope you have a great day. We'll see you in the next video.